Hi guys, and welcome to another new segment. Now I know that we've covered this particular car before and there is a very good reason for it. It's because the new X3M and the new X4M, which BMW have just released, so you can place an order for it. Deliveries I think in America are July and in the UK in September. The reason why it's so important and why we're so excited about it is because it has the new generation of M engine, which is called the S58. Now, the reason why this engine is important is because it will also be in the new M3, which is due to come out in 2020. The engine itself is based on the B58 engine, which we've seen in the M140i. Some of the main differences being the fact that the car is twin turbo instead of single turbo. It also revs 200 RPM higher, and it produces a significantly higher output in terms of horsepower. So the B58 engine stock form we've seen is quoted at around 340, but we've seen around 360 on our dyno. In X3M and X4M, the base engine is going to make 473 horsepower, and in the competition models 503 horsepower. So now this makes this the most powerful 3-litre M engine that they've ever released. Now you might be thinking, what about the M4 GTS? Surely that's got more power. No, that's actually rated at 493 horsepower, so this has got a whole 10 more horsepower. And if we know anything about BMW, it's that they always underquote their horsepower on their cars, so we expect to put one on the dyno and for it to actually make more than that. But until one comes out, we won't know exactly what it's doing. In terms of the engine also, if we look at the dyno graph, you can see that the peak power is held for quite a large portion at the end of the rev range, which is similar to what the B58 engine does. Now that's going to make for a very fast car, because it means that when you're actually accelerating, you'll be in the power band most of the time. The torque curve is obviously very flat as well, and it looks like it's going to be a lot of room for tuning on this model. In other aspects of the engine, BMW have done something very trick with the cylinder head, and it's not something that I've seen before. I'm very familiar with 3D printing because we use it for our development on the e-Venturi intakes. BMW have taken this one step further, and they're actually 3D printing the cylinder heads. And they've said the reason for this is that it allows them to make complex shapes and allows them to make it lighter weight than it would normally be. You can see from this clip that they're actually printing the cylinder heads and then fitting them. The shapes do look very complex, and this is probably the reason why they've done this, because they've said that they wouldn't be able to do this in a traditional casting. Also, the car is liquid to air charge cooled rather than air to air. The reason why BMW have been doing this on modern cars is because they say that it provides a better throttle response and actually maintains lower temperatures at the track. On BMW's official press release, they have also stated that the pistons are forged, and we have seen conflicting information as to whether the crank is forged also. Now what that means is, with a car with forged internals, it can actually be tuned to a higher level than it comes out with safely, because everything is stronger. Now this is great news for us as tuners, because it means that you can tune the car a lot further than you would be able to before without having to actually upgrade the engine internals. For example, on the S55, when you want to take it above 800 horsepower, you have to then start doing an engine build and put in forged pistons inside the car to make sure that the power is available reliably. Now, the S58 block is also closed deck, just like the B58 and the legendary 2JZ engine from Toyota. Tuners can read that as it's being more boost friendly. So I think the potential for this platform is going to be absolutely huge. Also here you can see a picture of the intake that BMW are putting on this S58 engine that's in the X3M. We do expect the intake on the M3 to be slightly different when it comes out, probably not mounted on the top of the engine, but a left and right airbox like it currently is in the M4. Now BMW say this is an optimized airbox. From our experience with e-Venturi, that kind of airbox doesn't look too optimized to me. We will take a closer look at it when we can, but when BMW or any company make an intake, they're really doing it to reduce the sound of the noise, and it's called an intake muffler rather than trying to get power out of the car. So I think it's going to be a challenging one because of the way it's positioned inside the car, and it also has a strut brace going through the middle. So when we get the car, hopefully in September, or take a closer look at one, we can have a look at the airbox and see what e-Venturi can do with it. Now, the sound of the S55 engine has always been a bugbear with owners. I personally think it's the worst M3 engine sound-wise anyway. It's a brilliant technically, but when you put an exhaust on that car, it sounds terrible most of the time. With the S58, we have heard clips, and we've actually put them on our channel before, of the X3M going around the Nürburgring, and I think it actually sounds pretty good. So I think that bodes well for the sound of the car. And the B58 does actually sound pretty good. Yeah, most exhausts on that platform do actually enhance the sound of the car and make it enjoyable rather than cringeworthy. Now, it's interesting to see whether anyone from the Supra side of the world are actually going to take this engine and transplant it into the Supra, or whether they think that this engine should have come in the Supra in the first place. Do you guys think that BMW reserved it for their own models and they won't release it to Toyota? Or how long is it going to take for a crazy guy to actually do the conversion? I think that will be absolutely amazing. In terms of the drivetrain, it's a drivetrain we've seen before. It's the same as in the F90 M5, with the exception that it won't be switchable. So it's mated to a 8-speed automatic gearbox, and it will also have a rear bias. So on the F90 M5 and the X3M, it will basically be running the rear wheels, and it will only send power to the front wheels when it detects some slip, which makes the car much more fun to drive. It's got M-specific suspension, M-specific brakes, so handling and dynamics should be very good for a SUV. Even the normal SUVs from BMW do handle really well, and the M's basically take that to another level. The first time I drove an X5M, I was completely blown away with the performance of it and how it handled this. You drive that car and you think you shouldn't be able to go this fast in a straight line and around corners in a 2.5 ton, whatever it weighs, SUV. So I think with the smaller proportions of the X3M and the X4M, I think it's going to be a fun little package. Now, moving on to the looks, I love the way the X3M looks. I think both of them look fairly good, but I prefer the X3M. I think it's slightly more proportioned. The front end of the car looks very similar to the F90 to me. The grills aren't too big, which is good news. They're slightly bigger than we've seen before, but it's not taking it to the 7 Series level. It's got a lot of M touches, like the side grills, the front splitters on the front. It's got the rear diffuser, which is also in carbon fiber. And it's something that I've mentioned before, but BMW have really stepped up the interior. I love the interior in the F90 M5 compared to the F10, and the X3M doesn't disappoint. The pictures of the interior look absolutely stunning. The leather seats look amazing, and they've also got that kind of quilting in the middle. We're not sure what's option and what's standard on that particular setup in the interior, but if the F90 is anything to go by, I think the cars will be pretty well spec'd from the factory, which is not something we're used to from BMW. Usually they come with nothing and you have to spec everything. On the F90 that was kind of reflected in the price, but we'll have to see what happens with the X3M when they release more details on it. Now, in terms of UK pricing, the X3M comes in at £77,000, with the X4M coming in at £80,000. Now, at the moment, the pricing is only listed for the competition model, and we think that's because the standard model is not going to get released in the UK. We're still waiting for UK dealers to get more information on that to know whether that's actually going to be the case, but I have heard from several sources that there will be no base model in the UK and it will only be the competition. So it all looks pretty positive so far for the X3M. But what are the negatives are here, you ask? The ones that I can pick out is that it appears that the X3M is slightly slower than its nearest rival, the GLC 63 AMG, and it's actually more expensive than that particular car as well. The car is actually quite heavy. I was expecting it to be a bit lighter, but it's 120 kilos heavier than the X3 M4EI. So what do you guys think? What do you think are the positives and negatives of this particular car? Comment in the section below and we'll try and reply to everyone we can. So that's the news. If you want to watch more BMW related news, you can watch that over here. If you'd like to watch something YouTube suggests you might like from our other videos, you can watch that over here. Now, if you did like the video, please click that thumbs up button. And if you've got any questions, you can put those in the comments for us. If you haven't already, please subscribe to our channel.